All right, there we go. Welcome back, everybody. This is the David and Mike show. Formerly, I always want to say Ask the Coach still, but we just had a name change. So it's the David and Mike show here for our CubeFit coaching. And we have a special guest today. Sometimes it's just us two, but we have a guest today who I know really well because she's here in Houston. She's my coworker. She sits right beside me when we're actually on campus. What is that, right? So I have Jessica Green. She's a registered dietitian, and we started talking about some sleep stuff last week, and we're gonna take that to the next step and talk about some nutrition and diet approaches. So we thought we'd have the expert on for that one. And so she's gonna kind of share how she approaches things. She's gonna answer some questions for us and things like that. I want to get started because we kind of started this series as a way of talking about planning and tracking sleeping, nutrition, training, those three big things. So Jessica, first off, what I wanted to hear your thoughts about was meal planning and kind of how you approach them, why you do it, who it's good for, all that good stuff.
Oh man, well thanks David and Mike for having me. I'm very excited. Yeah, I we shared a front desk. So
Yeah.
I don't have anybody share, it's just me and the cat. So thank you again for having me. So meal planning is sometimes kind of very scary process. It seems very rigid. You know, we can buy meal plans, they last for 14 days, 21 days, all these different days, right? My concern with meal plans is always what happens after that, right? So hopefully that meal plan that you purchase, and if you purchase one, great. I'll make one for you. That's not an issue. But I'm always, like I said, concerned with what happens after. So meal plans provide, or menu plans, however you want to call them, and you're going to hear me call them both ways, they provide some structure, right? And sometimes we need that structure. They provide that, hey, I know I'm going to have for lunch. I know what I'm going to have for dinner. Maybe I know I'm going to have for snacks. And I know I'm making sure that I'm getting all the food groups in. So I'm getting all the macronutrients. I'm getting all the micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. And I'm getting all of my phytonutrients, which are those beneficial dietary components that help with inflammation. They help with reducing our risk for cancers, heart disease, all that good stuff. So when it comes to meal planning, my approach, and I still meal plan, I'll admit, I will meal plan kind of on and off. I will be really, really diligent, and then I find myself in a food rut, you know, kind of like same old, same old. And then I'm like, that's a trigger for me to, hey, let me jot down, let me get back to the basics, let me get to the foundations. So then I will literally, I'm a pen and paper kind of person. So I will literally write out my meals for what we're gonna have for dinner, lunches, etc. So if you're looking for a little bit of structure, you're like, hey, I wanna do better with nutrition. I want to make sure I'm getting everything I need. Meal planning may be for you. And again, it doesn't have to be a paid. It can be that, hey, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to make sure I'm getting all my food groups and giving myself a little structure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of goes along with, I know we started talking about planning, but that kind of goes along with tracking too, because you're just being mindful of what you're taking in, kind of how much, what your meals look like, how versatile and how colorful your plates are and stuff like that. So that kind of bleeds into that second thing that we were going to talk about. Go ahead, Mike.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You were talking about a food rut, and my wife and I fall into those always about the same time. I don't know the science behind it. Is it really a real thing? And if so, is it because your body is craving something differently than you aren't fueling it with, or what is?
It's a great question. It's a kind of, we're creatures of habit. It's comforting. It's when we get into those ruts, those food fatigues, it's, you know, hey, I don't have to think about it. I know I'm going to have spaghetti and meat sauce on Thursday. I know I'm going to have this. And there's a little bit of comfort almost in that. And so we naturally will fall into that pattern. And with that, that's when we start seeing things like maybe a little extra snacking happening, because we're falling into a comfort zone, right? We're getting just
Oh,
like, oh, kind of
oh,
coasting.
right. So I misunderstood that. I thought you meant boredom with food in general. And we seem
Oh.
to have that issue where we always do the same thing. We'll plan out our meals. We go
Mm-hmm.
shopping usually on a Sunday. We'll have food for the entire week. We know what we're having for lunch, dinner every day. But we just go through these phases, and they seem to happen at the same time where nothing sounds good to both of us. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's like clockwork. When it happens to me, it happens
Mm-hmm.
to her. Nothing sounds good. We're hungry,
Yeah.
but I thought that that's what you were referring to. So I'm going off on a different tangent right there. So
Yeah. Well, when you
Oh,
have those,
that's
then
so
that's a
fun.
really great time to experiment. Like, that's a good time. Hey, let's pull out some cookbooks. Let's pull out Google. Let's go take a trip around the world. What's a different cuisine? That's when you
mhm,
start doing some food challenges to yourself, meaning, hey, what are some good Peruvian dishes, right? To explore different flavors, okay? Different
interesting.
peppers, different fruits, different vegetables, okay? That's when you're like, hey, what is fennel, right? In CubeFit Bites, I talked about this farro risotto that I did, and it was used fennel. So that's when you start kind of chipping away at that. Nothing sounds good because you're kind of bored with it, right? It's that same old, that routine. So go get your
That's
passport,
interesting.
go on a
We
food.
we have a few go-tos that we make a lot that are kind of
Mm-hmm.
favorites, but we don't recycle the same recipes very often because we're always looking for new things. But
Good.
I mean, it could be something like, maybe we're just eating too much chicken one week and it just doesn't sound good the rest of the week,
Mm-hmm.
or beef or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's great advice. I do like
Yeah.
a, a wide variety of food in my diet.
Yeah. Sometimes you brought up chicken, right? Everything tastes like chicken, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if y'all have seen the movie The Matrix, and with Keanu Reeves is back in 99, 2000, 2004. Well, there's a scene in there where one of the guys talks about how the Matrix, the machines couldn't figure out what chicken tastes like. That's why chicken tastes like everything. So, and it's so with that, where I'm going with that is that, okay, if we're going to plan to have chicken, plan it, kind of space it out. So, for example, and I have, there's 4 of us in this house. So I buy these big packets of chickens. Ever since quarantine happened, they started packaging chicken in bigger containers, at least here in Houston, David. I don't know if you've seen that at Kroger's and whatnot, but they come in these humongous things. It's hard to find small. So I've had to kind of adjust my planning. So with that, I get this big thing of chicken. I usually will not plan to have chicken 2 nights in a row. For that kind of, I want to mix it up. I want to have variety. So I'll get this big thing of chicken, and actually, because the chicken breasts are like really big, I'll actually fillet it. So I actually get double the amount of chicken. I guess like a 2 for 1, right? But I will fillet it, cook it, do what I'm going to do with it on Monday, for example, and then I may not have it because that chicken, even filleted and taken out of the package, will still be safe in the refrigerator until maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday. So then I'll just plan to have that chicken, the rest of it later that week. Again, just to add variety in that week. So we're like, oh, I'm going to bake all this chicken and I'm going to have chicken all week. I can definitely see how one would be kind of like, all right, I'm done with chicken. And I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, we're definitely creatures of habit because I have the same lunch every day, same breakfast, same lunch,
Mm-hmm.
same even dinner, like
Mm-hmm.
Monday through Thursday, and then I always switch it up on the weekends. But
Yeah.
it's just so easy if you get in a groove with that, and especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're still tastes good and stuff like that. But what does happen for me is I kind of gross myself out with a dish that I really enjoy because I've had it for 3 months or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, and you have to switch it up.
Yeah. 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 Totally. That's when you start like, okay, I gotta switch it up. Move on, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. So that's the meal planning, and then I guess taking it to the next level. That's kind of a form of tracking, I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Taking it to the next level for people that want to track food, how would they go about doing that? Are there any resources they can use? And how do you know if it's a good or bad idea for you to do
So there's a couple different ways to track, and tracking can be cumbersome, and it can actually cause a little bit of a bad relationship almost with food, where we become over obsessed with tracking and what is this macro number, what is this number. We get very caught up in those numbers, right? So it is definitely a balance. I approach tracking in that it's data. It tells me if maybe I'm focusing on my calories and protein and fiber and sodium and all of this. So it gives me that data. Maybe I'm tracking it as a way to create awareness. Sometimes when we're like, oh, I want to do better nutritionally, I don't know where to start. Be unbiased and just enter in your information. Find an app, whether it's MyFitnessPal, Lose, it's another one. Virgin Pulse, I understand you can also track in there, but track unbiasedly. Everybody gets nervous about how to track in there, right? Like, oh, I don't want to know what I'm eating, right? So just track, just put it in there. It's just data, okay? So just put it in there. The important part is what we do with that data. So you track for maybe a day or two.
Can you guys hear?
I think we.
No, I can't hear. Can you guys hear?
Oh,
No,
I can
for
hear.
about 10
There
seconds.
you
we
are.
go. There we go.
Okay, there we
All right.
go. What was the last thing you heard me say? I don't even remember.
Oh man, you were on a roll. We only lost you for about 5 or 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
You can just pick it
So,
up.
okay, so we were talking about tracking. You enter your data. Just enter it, okay?
Yeah, unbiased.
Like, I only need a day or two. We don't need a whole lot more.
Yeah. Oh no, we're losing you again.
Y'all hear me now?
That's better. Yeah, there we go.
I'm just gonna go off mic here.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're good.
so it's kind of like last week. Y'all were having audio and computer issues.
Always something.
I know. Okay, so you have that data in there. Look at it. Okay, look at it and say, okay, what do I want to fix? Or maybe you're not realizing you're eating, you know, a larger portion of, let's say, something like trail mix. So a lot of folks will think trail mix is healthy, and it is, but it's caloric expensive. So you kind of look for some of those little hidden sources. The other thing you can do with that is look at your different eating patterns. So you track one day during the week, you track one weekend, and because we eat different Monday through Friday than we do Saturday and Sunday. Or maybe there's different days of the week where we eat differently. So track 1, 2, 3 days at a time, and then assess that data. What does that look like? Pick 1 or 2 things you want to tweak, implement those changes, and then track to see if you were able to implement those changes. And again, you can track using apps. You can track on pen and paper if you wanted to. Do you track, Stephen?
Do I? Yeah. Yeah. So it's super duper easy for me to track during the week because exactly what I just said. I eat like the same thing every day, and Jessica can vouch for that. Even when we were at the campus, it's just like fueling machine in between stuff. So it's really easy for me to do. But you know, even when I wasn't kind of in this rut or whatever you want to call it, where it's just that habitual eating the same thing every day, it was a good way for me at first, and a lot of people that I've worked with, that they just kind of have an idea for what they're taking in, and maybe they're looking at food labels for the first time in a long time or ever, or trying to understand those and stuff like that. So it's more of a like getting that knowledge base, and you can use that going forward.
Yeah, and it also allows you for accountability to yourself, right? So, you know, you don't have to wait on somebody else to review it or anything like that. It's like, hey, I just attended this webinar on sugars, so I'm going to start kind of being mindful and aware of that, and I do that through tracking or food journaling. We can also track our hunger and fullness using some of these apps, and especially if it's pen and paper. If you find that you finish a meal and you're like, oh man, I totally could have stopped 3 or 4 bites ago. That's data. That's data telling you, hey, you're eating too fast, or you're eating past the point of contentment, of fullness.
Man, that's such a big one. I think everybody has definitely been there where they're like, "Oh man, I should have waited like 5 or 10 minutes after I ate that last bite instead of going for the next like little snack or dessert or something like that." And then you're just bloated and miserable. I think everybody's been there, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem I have when I'm eating something I really enjoy that's really good.
Mhm.
I will eat it until it's gone from the plate. It doesn't matter how full I am, because I
Yeah.
love food. I love the taste of really
Yeah.
good food,
Yeah.
and I'm more guilty of that than anybody. If it's
Yeah.
just a ho hum, boring meal, I'll eat until I'm
Chicken.
full. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll eat until I'm full. But if it's a really good meal, I'm going to eat every single piece on that plate.
Well, do that chef a service and slow it down. So it's actually kind of fun when you're eating and you kind of like, let's say you're right-handed and you eat with your left hand. That like just that sometimes that small action, it doesn't work if you are ambidextrous, but just that small action actually hones you into that meal so you can slow it down and enjoy that meal, what you're eating, enjoy that bite. The other thing, and this is something I catch myself doing and I catch my kids and my husband doing, is when we're eating, we're chewing, sometimes we already have the fork and the spoon already scooped up and almost hanging around our mouth, ready for that second bite. So it's that putting that fork and knife down, in between bites, again, to enjoy that meal, give credit to the chef by sitting and savoring it. And then credit to yourself to like, yeah, enjoy it. So that way, you don't know if you're going to have it for a while again.
Yeah, not just shoveling it in, like you said, just
Exactly.
hovering, waiting for that next
Yeah,
bite, and don't have the chip bag right there on the couch, right?
exactly.
Take your serving or your even 2 servings, whatever you're gonna have,
Never.
instead of just reaching in there mindlessly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Put it on a plate, make it a thing, put on a napkin, whatever you need to do. But yeah, chips, anything, popcorn, doesn't matter what it is. Put it on a plate, put it on a napkin, bring it with you, leave the main box in the kitchen.
it's definitely a learning experience. But Jessica did something on her CubeFit Bites. If you guys haven't been on CubeFit Bites, it's right before our CubeFit coaching call right here, and it's really great. It's different topics every week, but one of them, she said for everybody to bring like a little piece of chocolate. And the exercise, it took like I don't know how long it was to eat the chocolate, but it was like 2 or 3 minutes to eat the piece of chocolate that you could basically just throw in and it would be gone.
Mhm.
But again, it was just like a practice of enjoying it and letting all of your senses kind of take over and feel the smoothness and the density and the flavor profile and what it smells like, all that stuff. So
All of
kind of approaching how you eat, you'll enjoy it more and you'll kind of slow down as well.
Yeah, you got to remember it takes about 20 minutes for our brain and our stomach to talk. So slowing down allows for that communication to happen. I mean, it literally has to go up and down our vagus nerve. So there's like a literal highway, right? Kind of. Not literal, but so give your body a chance. Work with your body, not against it.
Really good stuff. I love it. Um, so one thing that I wanted to cover that I hear people ask me a lot is the differences between like maybe what your goals are, like how you're eating. Somebody's eating just to be healthier in general, or if they want better body composition or performance or things like that. Are there big differences in how you want to approach your diet and nutrition?
Not necessarily. Now it can get very, very specific when it comes
Sure.
to athletic or sports performance, body composition, etc. That can get very, very specific. But in overall, generally speaking, it's still kind of the same. We're still going to want those colors. I talk a lot about colors. because that's where we get a lot of those phytonutrients, and that's where we do a lot for our overall health. Also putting things into not necessarily portion, but proportion to one another when our food is on our plate. So what I mean by that is keeping our protein, whether it's an animal or a plant protein, in about a quarter of our plate. Okay, so that's about proportion to all the other stuff on our plate. Putting what are called non-starchy vegetables, which are the high nutrient, low calorie foods, spinaches of the world, asparagus, beets, etc., right? All of those, carrots. Making that half of your plate. Making a quarter of your plate your grains or your your grains and your starchy vegetables. So those would be the corns, your winter squashes, your peas of the world, your grains, farro, quinoa, barley, rice, etc. Keeping those in a quarter to a portion of your plate. And the reason we want to do this is going to help. Maybe we're concerned about things like pre-diabetes. Maybe we've just did the know your numbers, and maybe our A1C is hanging around that 5.5, 5.6 range. So when we look at it from a health perspective, it's okay. It puts our starches in proportion to one another to help with that glucose control, that insulin excretion, etc. Also, in terms of performance, body composition, it's going to allow us to feel full. It's going to allow us to get all the nutrients we need without necessarily all of those calories, and making sure we're getting all of that macronutrients.
Yeah, having that foundation of health is kind of important before you add on and have other more specific goals.
Exactly.
I would think that, you know, having that first. Yeah. And then and then there's obviously nuance when you're talking about or body composition, but
right.
Check that off.
That's such a great point, David. I mean, it's okay if, I want to shape this way, or I need to build muscle, or what do I do after a long bike ride, etc. But if we don't, like to your point, if we don't have that foundation, then, you know, when you come and see me, or when they talk to you all, it's, hey, we got to kind of build that foundation and then work from there. Otherwise, we're going to build a structure and it's going to be wobbly and it's going to fall.
Yeah, it's a good way to approach it. And speaking about maybe wobbly structures, I always hear people talking about their latest diet that they're trying out.
Yep.
It's kind of like people who program hop, and I've been guilty of it in the past when I was a little bit younger. Program hop with their training programs. Like, okay, I'm going for this one, and now I'm going to do this one for a month or 3 months or whatever. People kind of do that with ways of dieting because it's the newest thing. You know, it might be a fad or it might work. Are there ones that work for everyone or specific people or anything like that?
So that's really, really great. And right now we're seeing things like intermittent fasting. We're seeing Mediterranean diet. We're seeing the DASH diet. Like I said, we're seeing meal planning come back around. Meal planning kind of never really went away. It's just, I think it's going to start becoming more in vogue. At the end of the day, because there's so much information out there and it's coming to us in so many different directions, you have to find one that works. And it sounds so silly and simplistic, but let's say you are dealing with maybe some pre-diabetes, going back to that A1C concept, okay? Then we need to maybe be mindful of something like intermittent fasting may not necessarily be for you, or maybe you're on certain medications, okay, that requires consistent intakes or consistent, we don't want to fast at certain points because of medications we're on. So you have to kind of take this information and digest it and say, okay, can this work for me? Okay. Some of them that have been well studied and well tested include things like the DASH diet, the dietary approach to stop hypertension, the Mediterranean diet. That plate I just described is called My Plate. And it's not new. It's actually been around for decades. It's the new food pyramid, and I've been very, very glad that the USDA now uses that as their food pyramid. But it's been around. It's been used to teach diabetes education way, 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 way before I was born. So when we're looking at diets, when we're looking at all of these different things coming out, and I'm the same way, I've been through them all. I like to try them out and see how it is. You have to be just very cautious about, okay, is this going to work for me? Also be mindful that when we go through that diet cycle of starting a diet, whatever it is, we actually make it harder. It happens in our hypothalamus. It actually makes it harder for us to go through the next cycle if we're going to lose weight, for example. So we just have to be a little bit mindful of that. Also, look for those that have withstood the test of time. That's a really great indication, because that means that studies have been done, randomized control studies have been done, it's been looked at, etc. So look for those who have withstood time.
Love it. Really good stuff there. All right, so I know that Jessica has a hard out at the hour, so I wanna finish off with this and just make sure we have time. So we got 5 minutes left. There's so much information about sleep and nutrition and training, and that's why we're doing this little mini series here. It can be easy to get kind of overwhelmed with all of that information out there, even though there's good information.
Yeah.
For somebody who wanted to focus on their nutrition and kind of get it on track and maybe have a healthier lifestyle, what are 3 action items or 3 things that you would have them focus on going forward?
Look at your fruit and vegetables. Really aim for 2 fruits, 3 veggies a day. 3 of those non-starchy veggies. How many fruits and veggies are we getting? Think about that fullness. We talked about it, right? That fullness cue. Do we have more occasions where we're over full, where we're, again, feeling like we could have stopped? Okay, and the reason I picked those 2 is those deal with different parts of the brain. Nutrition, we have to deal with actual 2 different regions of the brain. And then our third one, don't discount the other components. Don't compartmentalize sleep as, okay, I'm going to work on sleep. I'm going to work on exercise. I'm going to work on nutrition. I'm going to work on stress. They all intermingle. So when you're working on stress management, maybe some deep breathing, you're also working on your nutrition, because that's going to help. Maybe you're having some GI issues. That's going to help that GI issues. You have IBS, IBSD, IBD, Crohn's, etc. So when you're working on your stress management, you're also working on your nutrition. So don't silo all these different pillars. And I think I just saw a question pop up.
Yeah, you got one in there.
Okay. So on cheat meals or cheat days. Oh, I love that question, Mike. Okay. So food is food. It's about consistency. So if we have that, I'm going to use pizza. Okay. I love pizza. I could eat pizza 24/7, 365. I actually had it last night. If we demystify these cheat meals and we plan for them, or we utilize that hunger fullness cues, then we can include them on when we want, and have them within a good portion. So that's to answer your question, Mike, on that, I would encourage you to include them more regularly to demystify that cheat concept of that. Let me know if that makes sense for you, Mike.
Mike, did that make sense for you? It makes sense. It made sense for me.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
That's a very good way of putting it.
I call them fun foods when I'm talking with people. And it's funny how people are over restrictive during the week. And then on Sunday, they eat everything in sight. And they're just kind of, all of that caloric deficit that they were in throughout the week just got canceled out because they had this crazy Sunday cheat meal. Instead of, like you said, be mindful throughout the week, having little bits of fun food or food that you
your cheat foods, your fun foods, you know, have it there. When you start doing that, and oh my gosh, we're gonna be over here in a minute, that's okay. When you start doing that, you actually are messing up with the biology in your hypothalamus, and your hypothalamus is like, oh my gosh, we have this like plethora of food, but then oh my gosh, all of a sudden they're going to restrict me in all this food. So I'm going to hold on to every single calorie I can. And when our body does that, our body then kind of goes into a little bit of, I'm going to hold everything, but I still have to function. So I am going to do what I still need to do using as few calories as possible, which is how we hold on to those calories.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Great question, Mike. Great answers to all of our questions today, Jessica. We really appreciate you hopping on. I think it was a really good class and session, but I know you have to drop. So thanks again. And we'll see everybody next Thursday. And do we have somebody on, or are we doing training?
Not yet.
Okay, so it'll probably be a bunch of training talk. So please join if you can.
All right. Thanks,
Jessica.
Paul.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks all.